Hannah, thank you for coming on. I'm really excited to have you. Could you maybe give like a rough overview? So I don't know you very well. The only reason we're talking is because my really good friend Ben is related to you. I think like brother-in-law? No.
Cousin-in-law.
Cousin-in-law, yeah. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's like my little brother.
Yeah, there you go. And he was like, you need to have Hannah on your show. We always have the best conversations about religion and faith and growing up in weird spiritual backgrounds and then like kind of breaking out of that. And so I'm really excited to talk to you, but I don't know much about you. I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, and so I've got a rough idea of some of what you're doing there. But who is Hannah? Like, who are you? What is it that you're about? And then maybe we can kind of like rewind and go back into how did that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So wait, I just wanted to comment on Ben saying that we have the best conversations about religion, because it's so funny because Ben's partner and my husband both get so annoyed with us because all we ever talk about is religion. So we're like,
that's so funny.
Can go and talk about something else. We're talking about religion. Oh my God.
That's
okay,
funny.
So I am from South Africa. That's where I was born and brought up. And I was pretty much raised in a Muslim family. And gosh, I guess I'm on the show because I left Islam, and it's something that's growing nowadays. A lot of people are leaving the religion, and my story with it is quite similar to a lot of people I've listened to. So I mean, my family is really religious. Well, partly religious. My mom's really religious. My brother's really religious. But I don't know if you can relate to this, Phil, but in one family, I think you can't paint it with one paintbrush that everyone's religious, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So
everyone's got quite a unique faith and what it looks like to them. And,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, within my household, I think everyone believes in a different sect of Islam altogether. Wow. I mean, yeah, it's that very varied in my family.
Yeah.
But basically, in a nutshell, I grew up firmly believing that Allah is God and Muhammad is the last and final messenger. And it's indoctrinated into you so hard that you literally don't know anything else. And it's every other faith that you learn about it from a certain angle or perspective. That's kind of like not true. Definitely not true. Like for example, for me as Muslim background, I grew up believing that, it's so funny how Christians believe that that Jesus is the Son and the God. How can anyone believe that? That's ridiculous. That's why Christianity is not true and Islam is true, because we only have one God. And that's legit all I knew about Christianity. That was it.
Yeah. That's funny. That sounds like, I mean, I remember like in like religious education, generally speaking across the UK, most of the RE teachers are like some Christian. Just a random Christian that's decided want to be a teacher, wants to teach about religious education, but on some level is deeply skewed towards Christianity on some level. And like the way faith ends up getting presented, certainly when I was a kid, probably not so much these days. I think there's a lot more kind of like curriculum they have to hold to. Or like even a lot of the Americans I talk to, and they go to like a Christian school or they're homeschooled, right? You get homeschooled by a fundamental religious parent. And are you going to expect their perspective of Hinduism to be a particularly accurate one?
Like, exactly. You literally know nothing growing up in this bubble. Like,
no. Well, kids know nothing anyway.
Anyway, right? Exactly. And then you grow up thinking you know everything. And I think that's a dangerous position to be in.
Yeah.
Program to think you know everything. Because once I realized that I know nothing, the more I learned, the more I realized I had shitloads to learn.
Yeah. Wow. Was it quite a heavily Islamic kind of area that you were in? Like, what's that? Because do you say South
Africa? Uh-huh.
So this is like not my first thought of South Africa is, oh yes, deeply Islamic country. I mean, it's a very Christian country, right, on the whole.
So let me tell you a story about that, right? So I grew up in South Africa, and I did not know what a Christian country we were because I was in such a freaking Muslim bubble.
Wow.
And it was only when I left Islam that I realized, fucking hell, South Africa is a Christian country. There's such a huge fucking Christian community. And then, I mean, I used to see the church people out on Sundays, and they used to gather in the parks and stuff together. And I used to see it everywhere, but it doesn't click because you're only with the Muslims all the time. And it's such a huge, there's a huge popularity of Muslim in South Africa, like huge.
Yeah.
So you don't really, my neighbor growing up, she was Hindu, and a lot of the people in the building I lived in were Hindu. So I wasn't even exposed to that many Christians to realize how big Christianity was in South Africa for a very long time.
Wow. Yeah. That's so fascinating. I mean, it's intriguing because I look certainly in the UK, and you'll know a lot being in the UK now yourself. Like, it does feel like there is quite a bit of ghettoing within the UK, where different groups from different countries, you'll have Pakistan kind of areas, you'll have Indian areas, you'll have areas of people from the Caribbean, and that's just natural. People want to live with people that are like them, that believe the same things or have the same backgrounds, the same culture, same foods, whatever. And it feels like that's the case. Was that the case for your kind of family, the people you were around, that you didn't get exposed to Christian kind of people? Is that the case in South Africa as well?
I'll say one word: apartheid.
Of course, yes.
So the remains of apartheid kind of stick, like people, like there's still largely white areas, largely African areas, largely Indian areas, and it sticks. It's not like there's no longer apartheid where you can't go into the areas, or you can't live there, but it still sticks. Those areas are still there. Like the area I grew up in, and the area where my family still lives is highly Indian population, highly Indian. And I know someone I spoke to recently was saying that, when she thinks of the area I grew up in, she thinks that it's very white. And I'm like, yeah, if you go around like these rich coastal areas, it is very white. But come to where I grew up and it's very, very brown.
Yeah. It's so fascinating to me how, I mean, there's so much that you could go into with that, with all the different components. But there's some racist shit basically going on in there.
Definitely. And it's so funny because it goes so off topic here, but I didn't realize racism or what racism was growing up in such a racist country. I didn't realize this until I moved to England. And I feel like when I came to England, brown equals Muslim. And brown equals Pakistani. And I am neither of those two, I come from a Muslim background, but I'm not Muslim anymore. And you shouldn't even assume that because you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's wild. I think of my parents growing up as a kid. So this is like probably 20 to 30 years ago. Literally every corner shop was the quote unquote, the Packies. And I'm pretty confident a vast majority of people in the corner shops weren't of a Pakistani ethnicity personally, or race, or nationality, you
don't know, right?
We didn't know, that's for sure. My parents saying that did not know. But it was just like this culture, very white culture. I mean, we were up in Scotland for most of my childhood, or in rural areas, which again, you're going to be massively white, generally speaking, throughout the UK as soon as you get into rural areas. Sure. And like, I just had no concept for like, oh wait, I didn't even know what Paki meant. I never at any point was like, hey Dad, what does that mean? I thought it is the purveyor of penny sweets, that is what it means or something, the man who can sell you iron brew and fizzy cola bottles, or, I don't know. And only as I grew up, I'm like, oh wow, that's a people group from a certain country. And I'm like, oh, well, like, are they from that country? This is so far down the line. You start asking these questions. It's amazing how you just, like I said at the beginning, like as a kid, you know nothing. You grow up in a certain culture. And now I'm not blaming my parents. My parents are racist, but solely just because they grew up in racist worlds. And it's not because it's ignorance, right? It's impact is bad, yes, but the intent wasn't necessarily bad. Yeah. But it just goes to show that you can be just brought up as a kid not knowing anything, and you fully accept the world you're in. You fully accept the language of your parents, what they believe, what they say, how they the perspective they put across. You are entirely at mercy
For
of
sure.
the world you're born into, really.
And that is such a dangerous thing, though, because I guess, like, for me, growing up in that bubble of what your parents taught you, like, I guess, like, just rewinding back to my story about growing up in that Muslim bubble and the things that they feed you, it's actually quite a funny thing. When I actually left Islam, I was still living with my mom at that time. And I remember she was teaching my little brother about Noah's Ark. And I was in my bedroom, and I could hear her telling him about how Noah got all these animals into the ark. And I'm listening to it as if she's telling him a fictional story, but she's telling it to him, obviously, like it actually happened. And I'm thinking, like, this is a grown-ass woman who believes that this happened. And then I'm like, wait a fucking second. A few months ago, I believed this actually happened.
It's amazing how quickly we disassociate with our past self as well, right? And so you start to like look at other people and go, what a bunch of idiots, or these people are trying to brainwash everyone and they're so evil, or, you know, you can really create this narrative about the person you were, you know, 3 weeks ago almost, you know, like, because it's such a hard swing often. So talk to me about that. So you grew up in South Africa in this Muslim family in a world where you were not massively exposed to Christianity, maybe a bit, basically Hinduism and Islam, I'd imagine, would be your main exposures.
And atheism was the dirtiest word you could say.
Yeah. I can well imagine. And so people that are listening, a lot of the people listening are Christian or post-Christian.
Okay.
They would understand that as well. You know, atheism was, oh gosh, no. There's no sin worse. You know, you could, you know, there's many types of Christians that we'll allow in before an atheist. That's the worst. So what happened? Like, where did it all go wrong? Like, where did you fall off the wagon?
Do you mean where did it all go right? Right?
That's I do. There was a bit of facetiousness there, but yeah.
It's quite funny. And, you know, I was listening to another podcast recently about someone who just recently came out as an ex-Muslim, and she was saying that like she was very questioning things all her life, and she had questions that people couldn't answer. And I kind of think that was me as well. I was the same. I always had questions that people couldn't answer, and I always had a very critical way of thinking. And I actually remember the moment I stopped questioning things out loud, and that was when my mom got so mad, and she kind of was like, oh yes, in Islam you're allowed to criticize, you're allowed to question things in Islam, but you're not allowed to be arrogant towards Allah. Allah knows everything. You can't question him. I was like, honestly, what the fuck does that mean? I can question things, but I can't question him.
Yeah. And how does that line, who draws that line, and how does that get defined? Yeah,
but it was just like that moment that I realized that no one was going to take my questions seriously, that I stopped asking questions. And for a long time, I kind of like pushed it away. You know, I pushed all the questions away and I just got on with life. And I actually realized that I created my own version of Allah, of what I thought he was and who he was to me. And I practiced my religion in that way. So I was never bothered too much. And I spoke about this in my recent episode on my podcast. I spoke about how I never really made the connection between the way I dressed and my spiritual belief. And I never really made the connection between the way anyone dressed and who they are as a person. And I know my mom, she put a lot of emphasis on the way we dress. So she even would say that even if you prayed 5 times a day and you didn't dress in hijab, you'd still go to hell, or you're still like not a perfect Muslim. And to me, it was like, if that doesn't matter to me, if I can't see connect the dots, why the hell does it matter to God? It was always my line of thinking. But in my head, I created this God that it didn't matter.
Right, yeah.
And I kind of like went on with believing in Islam and believing in my God, in my merciful God, in my God who would forgive and who is looking at my heart and not my actions. And that's how I continued. Sorry, not my action, but obviously my actions, but not like my stupid actions that don't matter, like how I dress.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I got on with life, and then I got married into a heavily religious family. It's actually a Pakistani South African family. And they were actually a lot more religious than my family was. Like every woman, every woman in the house had like their head covered. They wore the veil, and I was the only one who didn't. And when when I got married, my ex wanted me to. So I was wearing the hijab, like the headscarf. I was wearing the headscarf because that's what my mom wanted me to do. But up until I got married, I was wearing the headscarf only in front of people who cared when I wore it. And I wasn't wearing it in front of people who didn't care because I wasn't committed to it. It wasn't my decision. Yeah. But then when I got married, it was like, it became a permanent decision to wear it because my ex wanted me to.
Yeah.
And then he also wanted me to wear the cloak, which is like a long black garment to like, it's like a loose baggy garment to cover your whole body. And then he also wanted me to cover my face, to wear the veil. And that's where I drew the line. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. It was never, ever something I was comfortable with doing.
Yeah.
Was veiling my face. I just could never do that. And yes, I said no. And he allowed me to say no. And that's exactly it. He allowed me to say no.
Wow. It's really crazy, eh?
Yeah. And so then I was married into that family, and I was always fighting against what they believed. I was always fighting against things. I was always criticizing things. There was a story about, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of jinns in Islam.
I'm not massively familiar with it now.
Right.
I think I've heard it.
Right. So jinns, so Muslims believe that jinns are like an alternative creation that are created alongside humans.
Right.
But they kind of like ghosts. They're not dead people. They're living. Yeah. They like they're creations. They're walking amongst us, and we can't see them, but they can see us. And there's various stories about where they live and how they live. And amongst the jinns, apparently there's believers and there's disbelievers. And so in Islam, Muslims believe that they can summon a jinn and they can control a jinn, and that jinn can possess other people. So it would be similar to in Christianity with like getting possessed and Yeah,
it kind of sounds maybe like angels, demons, that kind of idea on some level. These kind of ethereal
like
beings,
kind of, but
that
it's
can be
not
good or bad.
Yeah, but not so angels and devils. We would say that the angels live in heaven and the devil walks amongst us. Blah blah blah. But when it comes to jinns, they actually like they're humans,
earthly kind of beings.
They earthly beings, yeah, and they also will go to heaven and hell, basically.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so Muslims believe that they can summon a jinn and they can control a jinn. So in my ex's family, they believe that some of us were being had like black magic or something done on us by a jinn. And we were told to do all these rituals in the house, like spray holy water on the four corners and not supposed to eat steak. And I straight up told my ex, no, I'm not doing any of those things.
You love steak way too much.
Oh, hell yeah. But even so, I was like, no, I'm not doing any of those things. That's stupid. I'm not waking up at dawn to spray my house. If you want to do it, you can do it.
Yes.
So I was so always pushing out against everything that they were. So another thing is that they were highly against secular education, highly against it. And it was only like Islamic education that they valued. And for me, I was pushing against that. I got my degree while I was married. And I was the only person in that entire family to get a degree because no one believed in going to school there. And despite that, I did it anyways. And I was like very, very firm that if I had to have kids, they were going to go to school and they were going to complete school. So I was always pushing back against their agenda and against what they believed in that circle. But I would still pray. I used to pray sometimes 5 times a day, but not always. That was a hard thing for me to do. I could never establish.
It's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. I mean,
it is. Yeah. My God, it's like nowadays my day is so freaking busy. It's like I cannot imagining stopping 5 times a day to go and do that ablution thingy, and this like takes like at least 5 to 10 minutes to complete a prayer and then get on with my day. It's like, gosh, I used to do that, but yeah, I can't imagine doing that anymore. But yeah, it's a hard thing to do. But yeah, I used to do that. I used to fast every single Ramadan. I was quite good with the fasting. I used to pray a lot, like not the 5 daily prayers, but like just praying to God, like praying for whatever. I used to pray a lot. I used to read the Quran as well. So I had some belief. I think I just wasn't like firmly knowing what I was believing in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, from my understanding, and again, I'm not an expert on Islam at all, but I mean, Islam is a deeply fractured religion, much like Christianity. There's like, Christianity, you've got so many different sects, and then within those, you've got tens of thousands of different breaking aparts. And I know within Islam, you've got very differing beliefs across the boards. And then even when you get into the nitty gritty, you still have, people go, well, yeah, but with that, we're a little bit different. We don't see it that way. Or, and I guess, did that, was that on your radar when you were questioning things, when you were looking, were you going, well, maybe actually I'm just not exploring the right kind of perspective of Islam. Sure. Maybe there's a different type of Islam for me. Maybe if I got into like Rumi, bit of like non-dualistic, or, that there is these kind of, because I know for a lot of Christians that go through this, and I know for other people of different faiths, even Judaism and things like that, it's like, well, actually, maybe I'm just not a Hasidic Jew. Maybe actually there's a different type of Judaism for me that's not quite so extreme or whatever. Did you kind of go through those kind of explorations and
hell yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, in my own family, my own household, amongst my siblings and my mom and myself, everyone had a different Islam that they believed in.
Right.
A different Islam that they were practicing. And I think that's kind of still the case right now. I don't really know because I don't really speak religion to anyone. But yeah, so there was a period in my marriage where one of my brothers was exploring and kind of converted to a different sect of Islam. And it seemed very liberal and very modern. So I was intrigued by this. And this was the Islam I thought was for me. And, they were very pro-education. They were very pro-women's right. I say that in inverted commas.
Sure. Comparatively.
Comparatively. Exactly. And yeah, it looked, like you said, it was an enticing package. And it was a package my ex was very, very much against. And I actually took my ex to a Muslim camp by the sect. And I was trying to convince him that if we had kids, I'm raising them this way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it was quite, so I definitely went through that phase. And that was the last sect I actually explored, and I was kind of following that one right up until the end. That was the one I was following. And it was the one that aligned the most with my values for a while until I got more into it, which is any sect of Islam. Until you get more into it, you realize what it actually is.
Sure. The limitations suddenly come racing up to the forefront.
For sure. It's like not just the limitations, but it's also the hypocrisy. So I saw like religious leaders, like in this sect, apparently you could pick and choose which hadiths you wanted to follow and which ones you didn't want to follow, according to several things. And I actually saw like people who considered themselves Muslim leaders changing what they believed to suit their lifestyle. So they believed we couldn't celebrate birthdays, but if their kids suddenly wanted to celebrate birthdays, they found a loophole to make celebrating birthdays halal. And I was like, well, that's convenient.
Yeah. That's funny.
So yeah, it's like the little things that they don't add up. And again, I think again, you start questioning things and you're not getting answers and people are getting irritated with you. And for me, it was that irritation from people and not getting answers. That was a big red flag.
Yeah.
And also there's a lot of insecurity in religion, isn't there? A lot of insecurity because they have to have that. If that mindset is not the right one. A lot of people will have nothing. You know, a lot of these Muslim scholars or even Christian scholars, their whole livelihoods are based on their religion. And if you had to bust that bubble, they have nothing. So they have to protect that with all their life. And that's where that insecurity comes from, that, you know, the excuses for why people leave religion is created around that mentality, you know?
Yeah. We create all kinds of labels and terrible, it's just a complete denial of the other person's experience so that we can reinforce our experience. You
exactly.
know, it's existential. I think it's huge in people that are making their livelihood through this. But I think almost anyone, with something like religion, it's such an existential reality, right? This is who I am. I have given every year of my life, every day within that year to this thing, and it's shaped who I am, and it's how I see the world, and I chose to marry this person because of this religion, and I, brought my kids this way because of this religion. And if suddenly a few cracks get in there and goes, you might have been wrong, well, now my marriage, my kids, my life, who I am might be wrong, it's much better to quickly shut down that.
Yeah, and their reputation.
Those cracks.
A really big one is their reputation.
Huge deal.
Yeah.
No, that's huge. And I think that's especially big in certain Islamic groups as well, can be very big, right? It's very kind of reputation can be a very big thing.
It's very dangerous right now, depending on how big of an influencer you are in Islam. Because I know there's this one guy, everyone's talking about him right now, Yasir Qadhi. In the Muslim world, everyone's talking about him. Apparently, he has been getting threats from ISIS right now.
Wow.
And he's not even an ex-Muslim. He's a freaking Muslim. He just has, he gave this whole, gosh, it's so complicated, but he basically said that there's holes in the Quranic narrative because he went to Yale and he realized that there are freaking holes in the Quranic narrative. And he was trying to let the Muslim community know about this, but also I think he was trying to fix it from within, but it kind of backfired on him.
I can see that happening.
Yeah, it became a huge deal. I follow the ex-Muslim world so much online, and I just watch the politics from behind the scenes. But yeah, it's fascinating, and it's a bit scary what's happening out there. Scary, but also I think it's also good that people are speaking out, and I think it's really good that these platforms exist. I'm not very vocal about it. This is the first time I've ever spoken about my story on any public medium. So lucky you, Phil.
well done, though. I mean, thank you. I'm honored that you would. So and it can be a big deal as well. I mean, like you said, there's a lot riding on this, and for families involved, and for all these different things, it can be a huge deal. No,
for sure, it's a huge deal, and I'm not completely out as an ex-Muslim. I think a lot of my family members, they would, they suspect that I'm not religious, or maybe they suspect that I'm living a very modern lifestyle. But if I had to vocally say out loud to them that I'm an ex-Muslim or I don't believe in Allah, I think that would cause a whole other problem,
Right.
And I want them in my life. I'm in a good place in my life where I really don't want to deal with the conflict. So I want my family not around me. They're quite far away from me. I don't want them around me, but I want them in my life.
That's funny. Yeah. This is a huge thing for people as they make these transitions, though. This is your world, especially in most religions, especially very fundamental religions. Family, community, friends, everything, it all becomes kind of one giant bubble that is there's a very clear kind of line of you're kind of in or you're out. And then there's these awkward transitions where people do kind of step outside of that bubble. But there's enough distance where people go, oh yeah, they're still one of us. If we don't ask too many questions, if we don't look too closely, they're still in. And that works for a lot of people, and it can work, long term, indefinitely. That's the end. But there's a tension there, and there's a reality there of those people, your family, your friends, your loved ones, not really knowing you. They don't know you. They don't connect with the authentic, real Hannah. They don't know you
because
they know an idea or a concept of you that they want to know. And on some level, you can't open up because it will shatter that reality and maybe fracture some of those relationships. Like, how have you navigated that? How have you come to the place of going, I think this is what I have to do though, for their sake, for my sake, for relationship's sake? Like, how did you go about navigating that? Like, was that something I'm imagining you put some thought and sweat and blood into that.
That's really funny that you've asked that. Because I think I just mentioned to you before we started that I had schooled my therapist today.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. So I just ended my therapy session today. Like I was in therapy again for, I think, probably going to be the last time for a while, because I feel like I graduated therapy. My therapist said that I'm my own therapist now. So yeah. But I was kind of trying to explore what coming out to my family would look like with him. But I kind of realized that he wasn't the right person to explore this with, because he's coming from a Christian background. And I know that there are a lot of similarities from leaving Islam and leaving Christianity. But I think that I'm going to be a bit careful with the words I choose here. But I think that with certain communities in Christianity and with certain communities, with any community in Islam, it's really, really a big deal. But I think with Christianity, it really depends on the level of dedication you're coming from and your family's coming from.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
There's definitely communities that are more or less even dangerous potentially to leave.
But in Islam, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in Islam how religious your parents are. Like, even if they are like the most modern Muslims in the whole world and you leave Islam, it's still a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And that's like the hugest difference. And because it's so new to be an ex-Muslim, it's a new thing. It's a fairly new thing to be an ex-Muslim. It's a fairly new thing to be an ex-Muslim publicly. And I felt like having that discussion with a ex-Christian therapist was not, we were banging heads all the time. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't working for me. So I felt like this is a conversation I have to have with other ex-Muslims, not with anyone from any other religion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I would imagine very few people within Christian circles would understand that. I can imagine certain Christian communities, maybe like ones that are much more kind of communal, maybe very separatist, live separate from the world and kind of much more, this is our community. That might be a more apt kind of scenarios, people that maybe leave that kind of Christian community. But on the whole, most Christian communities are not going to be anywhere near as severe. So I can well imagine that the average Christian, and I don't know if he's coming from a Christian background, he might even still be within that world as well. And so maybe it's even more of a anathema to him to leave your faith. I mean, why would you do that even? So I think there's so many barriers there to be breaking through that, you probably do need to be talking to someone that knows where you're going, and knows the battles that you face, for sure. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And my main concern with coming out is not having access to my nephews and nieces. I don't want to say this out loud publicly. I mean, of course, I do love my family and I care about them, but they're all adults and they're allowed to make their own choices about what they want to do. But but I know it's not going to be the kid's choice. If they cut me out, it's going to be the parents' choice, and that's not fair to me. That's not fair to the kids, and that would be my main concern. So I do, it's a difficult one to consider. It's a difficult one to navigate. I think the only reason I came to the place I am now is because I live so far away from them that it doesn't really matter how I live my life. And I think like a lot of my culture has to do with reputation. So when you're in the eye of everyone and everyone's seeing what you're doing and it's affecting everyone's reputation, then it's a problem. But if you're far away and not in their eye and nobody really knows what you're doing, nobody really cares what you're doing.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But so I guess my issue is that I do plan to grow my audience. I plan to become more public. And facing this reality, my family facing this reality is going to be a reality soon, sooner than I might have wanted it to. And it is something that I have been currently exploring.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's something that we all navigate on some level. These how our personal choices, how our personal views affect the relationships around us, because they do, right? Whatever that looks like. Even if you're married to someone, you both get married believing in certain things, wanting the same ideas, having the same visions and goals, and then along the way we change, we grow, and we adapt, and then you realize, I'm not really happy with my wife wanting to do that. I wanted to do this. And you have to then learn to compromise and figure out, or you can't, and you end up maybe getting divorced or breaking up. There's so much going on just in general. Never mind when we bring in these things that are the core kind of, the core bedrock to a lot of people's lives. Something like religion. That's like a whole nother level. It's not just like you said you wanted to be a doctor and now you want to run a podcast or something. I don't know. Like, it's like, that's a different change, but okay, we'll deal with it. Not, you said you wanted to spend eternity with me one day and now you're going to go to hell or whatever. I don't know.
Exactly. That's exactly it, right? I mean, I'm an adult. It's my grown ass decision if I want to go to hell or not, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so funny.
But no, it's, that's exactly it. It does. It affects so much of your life. But I've been very, very lucky in the sense that I've built a whole new community. I'm remarried. I've got a husband that I love and I feel really safe with. I feel really safe in my environment. If anything had to happen with my family relationships, I could definitely 100% handle it right now. It would not be the best thing because, I'm saying out loud, I'm saying publicly, I want them in my life, but whatever they decide is their decision. And that is not something I can control. It's something I can actually understand, though, because I understand where they're coming from and I understand their way of thinking. I can completely understand it. But at the end of the day, it is their choice. But yeah, that's what it is. I think I am in a good place in my life to come out, but it takes a while to get there. Yeah. I have friends who have come out a lot earlier than I have. But it's different for everyone. And that's something I just want to highlight, that it's so different for everyone because there's so many things you have to take into consideration when you do come out. Where I'm not sure about from a Christianity point of view, but like I know from a Muslim point of view, having your own independence and a place to go to is vital if you're planning to come out. Because there's so many stories of people getting kicked out of their homes and not having anywhere to go, not having any money. Some people couldn't even complete school. There's so many stories. So having that plan and having that independence is number one. Yeah. And it's so ironic because I remember when I was still Muslim, I remember my brother and my mom having a conversation about ex-Muslims because it was becoming more prevalent. And they were saying that if someone in your family has to say they're not a Muslim anymore, you should love and support them and show them that Muslims are really good. And I think that's so ironic because someone in our family recently came out as not as an ex-Muslim, but she left for a different faith. And the family completely shoved her out. No one speaks to her.
They forgot that bit.
Totally.
Yeah, that was the exception to the rule, right? There's always an exception, and it's this one. It's like the birthday party, right? Oh yeah, we do this. Oh wait, but not when my kid wants a birthday party.
Oh wait, I can have cake, but I can't have candles because that's from a different culture.
There you go. Yeah, you love and support people if they leave Islam, but not if they leave to that religion. Or we all figure out what it is that makes us feel we can do it, and we can explain away almost any belief that allows us to kind of like just feel safe in this world, right? Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're all doing on some level, right? We're just trying to paint some narrative to kind of feel a bit
to feel
stable or
safe.
whatever.
And I think that's something really important to talk about, because I've seen it on your platform. I've seen that you talk about this a lot, Phil, and I love that. But it's that when you leave religion, you are deconstructed, and you have that safety falls away. And I know when I left, and actually this is also why I get really angry. I understand the excuses that the religious people make, that, oh, they just don't understand the religion, or, you know, they even say, oh, she just wants to drink alcohol and have sex. It's like, dude, I could drink alcohol and have sex and be a freaking bad Muslim. I did not have to leave Islam to do that. But
That's funny.
Yeah, but I mean, I get mad with these excuses of why people leave Islam, because it was so difficult to leave it. It was such a difficult decision to come to. It was so emotional to leave everything I believed in, to leave that safety net, and to realize that this whole world is completely different to what I grew up believing it to be. And then to find a purpose after that. It was hard. It was not an easy thing to do, you know, to find, why am I alive? Why am I here? What is this about? To find all of that outside of religion, it's a lot of people suffer with it. A lot of people get depressed. And now I know religious people will swoop in and say, oh, they're depressed because they don't have God. And yes,
well, it's the perfect scenario. Like, see, you're not doing well because you don't do what you should have.
Well, they are depressed because they don't have God, but that only depressed because you taught them that that's what they needed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a real grieving process. I've talked with grief experts, and they talk about this, and you're literally dealing with death. Like, there's a death of yourself, there's a death of your community, there's a death of your family. Certainly, the relationships you have are gone. Like, they're not there in the same way.
I've lost
the death
friends.
of your God is dead. You know, and even if you have a new concept of God, the God that you had all your life growing up, that you had a relationship with, that you pray to, or what, gone, dead.
Gone.
And so you've got to go through grieving that. Yeah. And it's like that. Yeah,
it's just like that. And it's just, it's so scary. You know, Phil, I used to have nightmares about hell for such a long time. I had to, like, my method to get over that was to actually historically research where the hell came from and give it like a physical, logical explanation. And then also like the realization of hell, like in the Quran, and I'm sure it's the same in the Bible as well, where hell is very medieval. There's no nuclear bombs in hell. You know, there's no guns in hell. There's nothing modern in hell. It's very time specific.
It's a very cultural metaphor, right?
And it's very cultural.
It's a metaphor of pain, suffering, darkness, you know, whatever, death. But we're going to use the language we understand right now and the terms right now. And I think you have to understand that, like, any way you cut it, yes, it could be talking about physical places or whatever. Yeah, sure, that's possible. But it also, I think on a deeper level, anyone would at least engage on some level with the concept of, we all understand what hell is. We all have lived through hell, right? Just what we discussed as a deconstruction process. That's hell. That is going through hell. Yes, you're correct. I'm going to hell today. Not like one day when I die. I'm going through hell today because I just lost my gods, my family, my friends, myself. You know, that's hell on earth. It really is this horrible process. And I'm going through it. And hopefully I find some sort of heaven, right? Some sort of paradise.
Yeah, and you do. I mean, if you have the right tools, if you have the right support, if you find the right people, you do get to the other side. And I will say, I think that it's a lot easier to go through this process when you're younger than it is when you're older. And it's a lot more ingrained, because I've seen older people who've left the faith who really, really struggle with it because it's been their entire lives. And I'm not that old. I'm not that. Guess technically I'm young, But even for me, I feel like Islam has robbed me of so much of my life and so much of my opportunity. And I feel like I'm so behind on so many things because of the way I was brought up. But imagine being older and coming to that realization. It's so much more difficult to adjust. And I definitely think that bridge and that support is needed for ex-Muslims today. I'd love to get on that scene. I'd love to help out with that. I do have to come out properly to be able to
do that. You might have to on some level. Depends. I don't know. You could do very on the ground work where you are locally or something, and maybe no one would ever know. Talk to me about that though, because this is something that fascinates me. So my world is generally revolving around people that are deconstructing from Christianity, conventional forms of Christianity. And I know the data on this. I know people in and out. I talk to thousands of people a year about this, are going through it. I know a lot about this area.
Okay.
And this has been going on for hundreds of years on some level, but it is getting faster and faster and bigger and more.
Yay, progress.
which is wonderful. It's great. I see it as a big spiritual awakening, to be honest with you personally.
For sure.
Depends on what you mean of spirituality and things like that, but that's how I frame it. So this is something that's very much going on within Christianity. In some ways, I look at Islam and I see it on the same trajectory, but I do see, from my perspective of looking at the data I've been exposed to, it seems to be 20, 30, 40 years behind, in the sense that Christianity 20, 30, 40 years ago, certainly in Europe, had a mass just exodus. Like most people that said they were Christian 30, 40, 50 years ago are no longer Christian. The vast majority of them. And then if you look at the age brackets and you look at people alive today versus people alive 50 years ago, you've got a broad spectrum of Christians now massively atheist or agnostic, or maybe even something else as well. Actually, potentially some increases in Islam or whatever, there's a whole bunch going on, but Christianity not doing good. And as I said, that maybe is good. And it might even be good for people that want to follow the path of Jesus, because I think sometimes Christianity can be anti-Christ. In a lot of ways, it seems like that Islam is heading on a similar trajectory in many ways. Now, in certain cultures, in certain parts of the world, not at all. It seems that Islam is doing fantastically from my perspective. I'm not sure.
You might be wrong, actually.
I might be. I would love to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you talking about countries like Saudi?
Well, I think Saudi, I don't know. I don't even know what I believe about half of what I hear. So, I know that everything is progressing and growing and changing. Yeah. I know there's underground scenes. I know there's lots of things going on. Talk to me about this, because I want to know, what is the climate, maybe worldwide, maybe more locally in different areas. What's going on in Islam? Is there this mass falling away, deconstruction, people learning to think for themselves, explore more, I don't know how you'd word it politically correctly, but deconstructing, always offends someone if you say one term or another about losing faith or whatever.
Well, I don't know if I'm the best person to talk about statistics, because I don't really know the data.
Sure.
But from what I do know, I know that the data is not very accurate, because when it comes to leaving Islam, there's a majority, a huge majority of those people who leave Islam who just don't come out. So you wouldn't even be able to get them on any data. For example, myself, I'm not officially out, and there's so many of us. But there are forums online. There are so many forums, and that's actually something that I came across when I was questioning things. And that's where you actually realize how massive the ex-Muslim community is growing, and how, I found a ex-Muslim community in the UK when I was living in South Africa. And I actually made so many friends on that forum who I've actually met in reality now.
Oh, that's awesome.
And but on that forum, because I think it was at that time, it was the only ex-Muslim forum around. But on that forum, we had people from Pakistan, we had people from Saudi Arabia, South Africa. There were people from all over the world on that forum. And now, I follow a lot of ex-Muslims online on YouTube and stuff, and they interview ex-Muslims from every country around the world, everywhere. And that's why I don't think these statistics for Islam are very accurate right now. I don't think it's something we could get a broad sense of it. And even when they say Islam is growing, it's growing through reproduction. Those numbers are not that accurate. There's so many stories of people who came into the religion and immediately left, or left a few weeks later, and those things are not getting recorded statistically. I think our statistics for Islamic growth or decline is just not very accurate right now.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely think it's growing. I definitely think it's on the same wave, not on the same wavelength as what Christianity is, but I think that like people are forecasting that it's going to be that way in the next, I don't know, 20 to 50 years. We could see it in that direction. But yeah, it's definitely growing.
Yeah, it seems to me that's kind of, I guess, what I was saying. I in just this massive shift in Christianity in the last kind of 50 years, probably less than that, but it's probably started around 50 years ago. We saw this massive undertaking of people just going, this just doesn't make sense anymore, or it's not for me, or going, or militantly, this is evil, this is terrible, but people just choosing a different path. And a lot of it has been probably birthed out of intellectualism, secularism, education, things like that. I'm sure plenty of people will say, if you ever do come out a bit, wow, it's because you went to university. None of our family went to university and we're all still saved, see it's clearly,
well, actually that was in my ex's family.
That was your ex's family, wasn't it?
Yeah, in my family, I'm like the dumbest one in my family, just so you know.
Okay, well there you go. Well, maybe it's that. Maybe you're not educated enough. I don't know. But it does feel like there's a lot going on. It's this hotbed of things. I was talking even about within Christianity, the conception of or the way that it's perceived, things like homosexuality, LGBTQ, that kind of stuff. Talking about how accurate the data is. It would be like being in a Christian church on a Sunday morning and going, everyone who's gay, put your hands up. No one's putting their hands up, right?
Exactly.
But there might be a few gay people in there.
Yeah, exactly. The other day I was listening to a podcast again about and this one guy was saying that when he went to mosque once, and the guy sitting next to him told him that he's an atheist, and he was like, well, what are you doing at the mosque? He's like, well, I told my dad I'm an atheist and he's forcing me to come to mosque anyway. And he says,
that sounds about right. Yeah,
and he says if I say the word atheist one more time, he's going to kick me out of the house. And I mean that just paints the picture, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, and this is it. So there's a fascinating statistic that I came across about a year ago, where they looked at people at the age of 18 to 29 that were no longer Christian, that said they were Christian, that grew up Christian. Sorry. But between 18 and 29, they said, I'm no longer a Christian, and they came out of their faith. They polled them and said, when did you decide to leave Christianity? And I think I'm trying to remember the statistic. I think it was in the 70s. I can't remember the exact number. It was in the 70% window of them decided to leave Christianity between the age of 13 and 16. And so it just shows there's this dynamic for young people within Christianity of you're going to church whether you like it or not. You can make your decision when you're 18, and guess what decision they make, right? But it feels like in some ways within the Islamic community, there isn't a when you're 18 you get to make your own decision. So there is that rebellious teenager that's made their mind up going, I'm not a part of this anymore, but you're a part of this. This is the world you live in. This is the culture. This is, you're not sticking your hand up to say, that's me.
No.
And that's a really interesting dynamic. It just hides the potentially what is going on.
No, for sure. And another thing, like just to circle back to like what you're saying about teenagers who leave the religion, just to circle back to, it's not safe to come out as an ex-Muslim if you don't have anywhere to go, if you don't have your independence. So they're not going to, they're going to stick it up and stay there until they can leave.
Yeah.
And then they might, put their hand up and say, now I'm not a Muslim. So like our statistics could grow in a couple of years, in 5 years, in 10 years for people who are becoming more independent and are able to come out. I mean, I think the Muslim world is in crisis right now over this ex-Muslim community. There's a huge backlash on YouTube with it. There's a lot of we call them dawah men. What is the Christian equivalent to a dawah man? A missionary, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. and they fighting back against the ex-Muslim community, and there's just a lot of heat online. I think the Muslim world is realizing there's a problem, and they are scared, they are insecure, they don't know how to deal with it. And they are dealing with it. Well, not all of them, but the ones who are very, very big on YouTube are not dealing with it in the right way.
Yeah.
And they're coming across as very violent, very arrogant, very ignorant, and they're just not putting their best face forward with it. But at the same time, it's an emotional thing for them, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're locked in. At least I'm trying to draw parallels between my world and your world, which, you know, there's these overlapping components. But like, in a sense, when I watch Christians do this and they start calling the deconstructing community all sorts of horrible names, or they say, oh, that person never believed in God anyway, or they're this, or they just want to go and have sex or do whatever. And, you know, all these things happen. But in a sense, they're bound. They're playing a game with a very, very limited set of, you know, rules and tools that they have they have in their arsenal, because they are bound to what the Bible says, or what they believe the Bible says, at least, or, you know, or what their faith dictates, or their tradition, or whatever. And so, you know, I look at a Christian that is deeply homophobic, for example, and they come across this homophobic asshole, and I'm like, but yeah, of course they are, because they're in a certain tradition that reads the Bible in this rigid way, in that way, which means they have to be homophobic. There's no other way. And so I'm not saying that's good. I'm not even saying we should accept that, but I am saying I don't think it was ever going to be any other way for that person. They are kind of locked in. And I wonder you know, you look at how a lot of the people, you know, you look at someone that's going to be a missionary, or what did you call them? Sorry.
We say, well, Dawa, we call them Dawa guys. But yeah, it's Dawa is the term for it.
Sure. But I'd imagine these are the people. So if you choose to be a Dawa, I'm imagining you're going to be like up there as far as pretty fundamental and passionate about your faith.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You don't choose that because you're like, not that fussed about Allah, but why not? You know, like, I'm assuming you're in, you know? And so, even more so, of course these guys are going to be, right? It's not like you're asking your Uncle Jeff who doesn't really care. You know, you're asking like someone that's made it their life purpose to try and save people into Islam. Of course they're going to be quite heated about this.
Yeah.
And so it's just this weird dynamic. But one thing that fascinates me is when I look at this movement within Christianity, the vast majority of Christianity has done themselves a disservice and only kind of reinforced, hey, you have made a great decision. Look at this. This is how I'm responding. You didn't want to be this, did you? Great job. Good job. Excellent decision leaving this because we were a bunch of assholes. That's how a lot of Christianity end up portraying themselves in this process. Here. But there are a set or even a movement within Christianity. Now, I personally, it's maybe a softer side of the same coin. But there's certainly within Christianity, there's a desire to go, okay, hold on. Can we include these people? Can we bring them in? Can we go, well, what are your problems with Christianity? And can we figure out a way to incorporate that? And I know you mentioned maybe more kind of liberal kind of sect within kind of Islam. Do you see a possibility in the future of there being more sects emerging from Islam that kind of are trying to accommodate this kind of ex-Muslim movement? Or is it such a harsh reaction from such a fundamentalist kind of community that you don't see that being particularly likely?
I mean, it's kind of funny because we already had a new sect emerge from all of this, which was I can't remember what they call themselves again, but they basically only follow the hadith, the sayings of the prophet. Sorry, they don't follow the sayings of the prophet. Oh, they're Quranists, sorry. So they don't follow the sayings of the prophet, but they only follow the Quran. And that was, I think, an attempt to modernize or make the religion more simple. And it was an attempt to do that. And a lot of people fall off that wagon, and it's like kind of a gateway into becoming an ex-Muslim. I don't know. I don't think there would be another sect because there's it really depends on the person who's leaving the religion. I think that when they leave the religion, they're not really looking for another sect once they've made up that mind. I mean, I think that there are a lot of talks right now about modernizing the religion and liberalization, and that's why I mentioned Yasser Qadhi earlier, because they say that he's trying to what they call reform Islam. So maybe that could lead to another sect, but there's a lot of pushback within the community on that. A lot of people don't want to hear it, and a lot of people are fighting back and being like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with Islam. There's something wrong with you," and so there's still a lot of fight and pushback to get to that point. I personally believe that it will be very watered down in a few years. Just maybe not for everyone. There'll still be people who would be following the very strict Islam or the very, traditional Islam. But I think that there will be a modernized type of Islam in a few years' time. I definitely think there will be. It seems like things are moving that way. And yeah, I can see that happening. The world is just changing so much. It's really hard to hold on to those ancient beliefs in these days and age. We have new religions already, and it's so funny. I find it so funny that like in Islam, and I'm sure it's the same in Christianity, when they see these new religions, they make fun of people who proclaim they are a prophet. And I'm like, but that's exactly what your prophet did.
Right. That's what your guy did.
Right. It's exactly the same thing. How do you see that as being different?
But our guy really is a prophet. Oh, okay. Right? Problem solved. Okay. Yeah, you got it. Good argument. Good argument.
Exactly. I mean, these guys believe their guy's the prophet.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And it does. I think something that happened to me as I kind of stepped out of kind of a conventional kind of Christian world was I started to have a lot more understanding for other religions and a lot more respect for other religions.
Yeah.
In other ways, I started to go, oh, we're all doing the same thing and it's all bullshit sometimes. But in other ways, I go, oh, actually, we're all doing the same thing and actually on some level, it's all beautiful. And there's actually some real beauty to what we're all trying to do. We're just doing it in really flawed ways. And in a lot of ways, we probably did it in a very healthy way 3,000 years ago for, something like a Judeo-Christian, maybe even slightly Islamic would kind of fall into that. A lot of this stuff kind of comes down to like ideologies that were like 3,000 plus years old and haven't really evolved. And so actually, it's hard to say that the 3,000 years ago, this was a terrible idea. But maybe if we'd grown, maybe if we'd taken the ideas, the mythology, the metaphor that religion is, if we'd taken that with us and allowed us to grow in our culture and move forward with that, some of the ideas are really beautiful. Some ideas of you have to die to grow and to live. And, that's a beautiful concept. Whether you believe in Jesus dying and raising from the dead or not, there's a very real reality that our ego has to die for us to really truly be transformed and grow and become who we are. Yes, I can get on board with that. That's great. And look at that. It's also in a lot of Eastern religions. Oh, and actually I can find it in some of the Sufis. And, I can see this in a lot of concepts. And so I do wonder sometimes. So this, that rabbit trail comes from a thought I had as you were talking, which is, so something that they looked at 2,700 people leave the Christian church in America every day. It's about 1 million a year are leaving the Christian church to never go back. And they polled them and said, what do you believe? Do you still have some sort of spirituality? And what's really interesting is about 78% said they still had some form of spirituality. They believed in something beyond just the physical material. They might have been quite agnostic about that belief, but they weren't just like, oh, there's nothing apart from this material. We're just hurtling through space on a rock and that's all. And it doesn't mean anything. A huge portion, 4 out of 5 of them believed in some form of thing that was bigger than them. As you look at the ex-Muslim community, do you think a lot of people as they leave take some form of spirituality with them, some belief in something greater, maybe a belief in Allah, but not that Allah? Or is it that it generally tends towards much more of an atheistic kind of position?
I mean, I think majority, it does lead to atheistic mindset more than spirituality. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who go through the spirituality. And I think it's actually, I can firmly say that it is actually a transition, because people go from Muslim to agnostic, and then atheist is like the last. So there is like that spiritual kind of holding on to something before you completely let it go. I mean, personally, I don't believe in anything. I'm not sure if you do, but personally,
some days,
like for me personally, I like to believe that there is something, but I feel like we'll never know. And I feel like there's no point living your life for something you will never know. And it's like, it's kind of like I just want to go back to what you said about all religions being like a good thing in some way. And like for me, when I look at like the historical context of religions, usually like I can say with Islam, and I think with Christianity and Judaism, it was about a man who was trying to change things that were wrong, that he saw that were wrong in his community at that time. And because of the knowledge level at that time, people needed some sort of belief to attach to that. So the only way he could bring about change was by attaching his belief to that, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in some ways, I really admire Muhammad for that. I really admire what he's done, because he, and I mean, Jesus as well, they've managed to create something that lasted years and years. It's incredible. It's amazing. But also, it kind of feeds to the laziness of the followers to just keep, you know, like it's so ironic, because in Islam, we have these things that we have a story about how Muhammad says that that his followers shouldn't be blindly following their grandfathers and their grandfathers. They should think for themselves. But that's exactly what everyone's doing in the Islamic community right now. They're following exactly what their grandfathers and their fathers were doing, and no one's thinking for themselves. And it's that's again comes back to what my mom said, that thinking to yourself, as long as you're not questioning Allah. So, you know, you can't actually think for yourself. You have to think within the religion. You can't think outside of that. And that brings about a lot of problems. But yeah, what was your question again?
I don't remember.
Sorry, I went on a tangent.
No, that's good. That's really interesting, because I 100% agree. And I think even people are psychologically at states at times. You look at how humans grow up and develop. At certain stages, children need certainty and safety and quite a stable worldview. And you need to give them a black and white answer, even if it's not 100% true. You know what I mean? We go, oh, well, this is how it works. And it's like, now as a grown up adult, you're like, well, it's actually way more complex than that. Jesus, wait till you grow up and we'll get into that. But they just need something to kind of like, you know, hold on to. And as they grow and develop, they go, oh, whoa, this is a bit more gray and I need to explore this. And oh gosh, that's a bit more, but they've got the psychological, kind of stability to pick things apart and not have the whole world crumble, you know, and not fall over and die. And I think that's in some ways reflects how cultures develop and grow as well. I think in very primitive societies, which I think it's safe to say cultures that were like, you know, freaking out the sun just went down. Holy crap, let's worship the sun god so that the moon god doesn't win. These are the cultures that birth monotheism. You know, like these are they're coming out of this world. They don't understand that we're going around the sun, or, you know, I mean, they're literally think there's a sun god somewhere and they're freaking out. You can understand that they needed some stability. You can understand when someone goes, hey, I think we shouldn't burn, you know, disabled people anymore, because maybe disabled people are, you know, not so sure. Well, God told me. Oh, okay, cool. Well, I can get on board with that. Sure. Yeah. You know, like we're in a culture where like we need a God. We need a person at the top that makes us feel safe and goes, well, actually, here's the word from on high. Whether the word from on high is in a Bible, a Quran, a Pope, Imam, a God, an Allah, whatever it is, we need someone up there to make us feel safe. Just like the 7-year-old needs mom to say, well, this is how it is. And they go, oh, I feel a bit safer that the sky isn't going to follow me, or whatever they ask their mom, you know? Exactly. But I bet you the mom doesn't really know what the ozone caving in. I mean, she doesn't really know the ins and outs of how our atmosphere works. So, you know, and so as that kid grows up, they go, that's probably not true. But yeah, you know, so I guess all I'm saying is in that, I think at times we need these kind of things to make us feel safe, and this. But I think humanity as a whole, as an overarching community, as an overarching consciousness, we're growing past the point where we need someone to just go, look, that's the way it is. It comes from on high. Just accept it. We're now at a stage where mostly throughout the world we're going, hold on, but let's think about this. Let's question it. Let's dive a bit deeper. Maybe we can actually find more meaning, more purpose, more answers. Maybe we'll end up in Mars if we stop questioning that, you know, where we are in the universe and that everything revolves around us. We might actually go to another planet, or we might, you know, I don't know. There's just we're somewhere new, I think, that maybe religions aren't moving forward. Maybe some will emerge. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but or spiritualities, I guess.
I guess there's a lot of spirituality things evolving nowadays, isn't there? That community is growing on its own as well. I think going back to that question, which I actually remembered what it was now.
Oh, perfect. At least one of us
did. Which was about spirituality. And I think like I can speak mainly for myself. I don't want to speak for the whole ex-Muslim community, but I can speak for myself and say that like I don't believe in anything. And I think one of the main things that religion has taught me, I would say, is this whole accountability system. You know, like in a religion, you are not accountable for anything, because it's either God gave you something because he's rewarding you, or Satan is punishing you, or God is testing you. But there's no accountability for anything. And when I left Islam, that is one thing I learned. And that one thing that changed my entire life is to be self-accountable and to do things not because I'm going to earn brownie points and go to heaven, but to do things because it's the fucking right thing to do at the end of the day. And yeah, we have learned some of these things from our religious beliefs, but at the same time, we've also learned things that we shouldn't be doing from our religious beliefs as well. Like when you speak about homosexuality, and when you speak about the situation in France right now, there's things that we don't fucking do. And you know what? I was a Muslim when 9/11 happened, and I was in the community. I was a firm believer, and I can honestly tell you, I did not understand 9/11 until I became an ex-Muslim, because of the dialogue around 9/11 in the Muslim world. I didn't understand it. Well, it's all victimization. As soon as it happens, all everyone talks about is Islamophobia. Nobody talks about the people who died. Nobody talks about the trauma of the victims. Everyone focuses on Islamophobia in the Muslim community. And that's exactly what happened then. And that's exactly what's happening now with the France community. And I'm so angry at all the reactions I've seen from my family about this situation, because no one is acknowledging that a fucking man was beheaded. No one is saying this out loud. All they're doing is crying wolf and crying boo-hoo. Islam is in the media. Boo-hoo. No one likes Islam. A fucking man died. Say it. Say it's wrong. And then cry Islamophobia. But say a fucking man died. Own it. It happened.
It strikes me. I guess Christianity is on the whole, a little bit away from our days where we were beheading people and killing people, but we have our history, a big history. We were killing our own people, right? The Catholics are killing the Protestants are killing Catholics. I mean, we cannot judge. And yet, the only kind of parallel I look at is there's this movement in America called the Westboro Baptist Church. And they are like extremist Christians, and they go to people's funerals and they boycott them because, you know, they think God like was punishing the nation. So they hold up big signs at the funeral and sing like hateful slurs and songs. And this is the grieving families, you know, trying to like, you know, whatever. And the Christian response to that is to go, oh, well, that's just extremism and whatever. And the truth is they actually are just, they are the most extreme example of what Christianity could look like. But it is an extreme example of what Christianity could look like. There's a dark side within what Christianity is that is expressed there that Christianity has to own and go, yeah, that is in our text. And we have to be open about that. And yeah, that is... And no one does that. They don't do that at all. Because to do that would to be self-aware and to maybe create some of those cracks that start giving us those existential crises.
And that's why it's no accountability. There's no fucking accountability in the religions. And
so there has to be this two-way, like you said, yeah, like, of course, Islamophobia is an issue. Of course, no one's saying, well, a lot of people are saying that's not an issue, I'm sure. But the point is like, of course that's an issue. Yes, I agree. But also an issue, there's something within Islam that allows certain groups of people within Islam to literally kill people. And can we talk about both components? Can we put both components on the table and go, yes, that's wrong, but so am I sometimes? And can we look at that as a more holistic conversation? That conversation just doesn't seem to be happening.
It doesn't seem to be happening because a lot of Muslims don't even know what is in the Quran. They don't even know what Islam is teaching them. I actually remember this conversation I had with my uncle about ISIS, so I lived in Turkey for 2 years, and my grandfather was actually worried that I was moving to Turkey to join ISIS, and I was like, "Do you even fucking know me? Like, do you really fucking even know me if you think I'm going to join ISIS? Like, how much do they know? Do they actually know who I am?" And at that time, I was an ex-Muslim, anyways.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, I was talking to. And then it came up again as like kind of your grandfather was worried that you're going to join ISIS, one of my uncles said. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be anyone's sex slaves. And he was like, oh, that's all the media's propaganda. That's not real. And I didn't say anything, but I was thinking in my head, do you know that sex slaves are in the fucking Quran? Do you know that? Why do you think that's propaganda? That's in the fucking Quran. People will do it if it's there. I didn't say it to him, but they don't know. They just don't know what is in their religion.
Yeah. And that's part of what I do with my memes. I'll bring up stuff like that. Sex slaves are in the Bible too. Christian tradition. God goes, hey, go into that town, kill every man, woman and child, but not the young girls. You can keep them, divvy them up amongst the soldiers. But what do we think the soldiers were doing with the young girls? Right? I mean, it's like what they were throwing them birthday parties. That's what they were doing.
Islam's a lot more I don't know how.
And it's maybe more explicit. Yeah, sure.
But much more explicit. Oh my God.
It's just wild that we do go, okay, blinkers on, quickly turn that page. Okay, we're at the promised land, or we're at the Jesus bit, or we're at the bit that makes us feel more comfortable and whatever. Yeah. But and I mean, we do struggle to look at the dark parts.
One of my friends took all these questions to an imam when she left. Well, she didn't take them. She was forced. Like, this is what happens when you leave Islam. You're forced to talk to an imam, and you're forced to get all your questions out there. So she took all her questions to the imam, and she spoke to imam. And the imam could not answer anything. There was like just trying to justify sex slaves in the Quran. Oh, it was context specific. Oh, it was a period of that time. But God put it there as a message for people for all of time. How can that be your justification for this?
Yeah.
You know, if God could have easily stopped that. You know, if it's wrong now, why was it, why would a God of all times not make it wrong back then?
Yeah. And this highlights the picking and choosing. Again, you look at a good example for Christianity might be how they deal with the slavery passages throughout the Christian texts. So you've got the Jewish text, the Christian text, both kind of pro-slavery, not certainly against it. And so they would go, oh, no. Now, back when slavery was on the table, they'd be arguing for slavery because they all had slaves. But now they go, oh, no, well, that was a different culture. It was a different time, but we've grown beyond that, and it's great. Okay, what about homosexuality then? Can it be a different time and culture, and can we grow beyond that? Oh, no, not that one. Okay. Now, some Christians do say yes to that. So that's not fair of all Christians. But, it's this picking and choosing. And the problem is when you do have that component, and I get it, we all have to do that with any spiritual text. You have to go, oh, well, what's the meaning? What's this deeper? What am I going to let it mean for me or whatever? But when you read it as a fundamental black and white text and you say, well, this is the word of God. This is the black and white text that if it says it, we have to believe it. And then you go, well, not that part. That part's cultural or contextual. You're clearly creating two things that can't coexist. It's just not possible. It's not possible for us to go, oh yeah, that doesn't work. You have to let go of the black and white, thus saith God. If it's in the text, we do it. Because there are things in there that go, oh yeah, the sex slave bit. Okay, maybe not saith God. I don't know. Yeah. It's really messy.
I don't know if you ever heard or if it's ever been said in the Christian community, but I know in the Muslim community, they say that, God gave the slaves more rights than they used to have, which is actually technically true. Yeah. But God also could have done away with slavery altogether.
He could have moved a bit further.
Yeah. They say Islam was given to us in stages so that it could be easy for people to practice it. So why couldn't the end stage be end fucking slavery?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think people need to grow in stages. I don't know. I mean, if you look back to early Judaism when they got the law on Mount Sinai and Moses is dishing out the law or whatever, you're talking a long time ago, if that was a time and that actually happened, 3,500 years, maybe 3,000 years. I can imagine 3,000 years ago, if you said to a bunch of people that probably all on some level had slaves or benefited from a system that had slaves, hey, no more slaves. I can imagine it would go badly. I can imagine someone going, okay, what if we just gave the slaves like a couple of days off a week, or whatever, like, or what if we gave the slaves like, this concession? What if we just didn't rape the slaves? Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine people being a little bit more open to that than no slaves. And so I can certainly understand how it happens just anthropologically, how it just evolves.
Yeah, for sure.
I can also imagine that there's a God up there that's going, well, I'm going to be hands off on this. I'm just going to nudge along the way. I can imagine a God going, I'm not going to give him everything at once. I'll nudge him in the right direction. I could imagine that. I can understand that argument. But the problem is, you can't then read your text as a black and white text. You have to say, okay, well, this text is evolving. This text is growing over time, and we have to accept that.
And that has to be on everything, not just slavery. Exactly.
Exactly. We have to at least it has to be on the table. Could this be another thing that we're growing beyond, that we're allowing ourselves to evolve in? Which in fundamental religion, that's just not a possibility. It isn't possible. So... Yeah,
well,
okay.
I mean, technically, I totally agree with what you just said. But technically, if God wanted to end slavery, couldn't he just like wave his finger and make everyone's mind be like, no more slaves, and send down the rule? And that would be it, because God is like God. In Islam, they say kun fayakun, be and it is. And that's what it is. So, I mean, God has magic, right?
He could, right? There's a concept of God that knows everything, does everything, can do everything. But then you could say the same of like, well, how come people get raped? How come people die? How people get starved? It's the same thing. If God was really a good guy, if he really could do this, And then you get all the people going, well, but free will, and, that's the big argument. And then it's a big mess. And I don't know.
Because we all need the dangling cookie to make us be good people, don't we?
Yeah. Well, but the free will argument is a bit of a misnomer anyway, right? Because you could say free will, but like we're talking about with kids, right? If I go, okay, Hannah's going to have free will, but, okay, this Hannah that I'm designing from scratch, I'm going to put her in South Africa, and I'm going to put her in a Muslim family, and I'm going to put her in this community, in this area, and I'm going to make sure she goes to this school, and then I'm going to make sure that this is her mosque, and this is what this is going to be like. And actually, I'm going to make her this amount stubborn, and this amount funny, and right. And the simple fact is, at some point, God, this being in the sky, is a total asshole if you get this wrong, because he made you the way that you would then freely live a certain way, right? I mean, on some level, at some point, free will falls down, because at some point, God kind of set this thing in motion.
Yeah.
And so it's problematic anyway. It's still problematic.
Well, I mean, the whole concept of in Islam of free will is bullshit, because they say that before we were even created, it was written who would go to heaven and who would go to hell. So what the fuck is free will in that?
Yeah. There's an extremist, well, it's not that extremist, it's considered quite normal. A lot of Christians hold that belief, it's called Calvinism, but God predestines people, and he goes, you go to heaven, you go to hell, and he makes people to go to hell. Because that glorifies God.
That's the same
somehow. I don't know how, but...
it's the same in Islam.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with that. And what blows my mind is I've been part of movements that believe that. And I probably, looking back, it's really hard. I have like some sort of dissonance looking at my past life, I think. But I'm like pretty sure I believed that as well when those seasons. I must have on some level gone, yeah, this adds up. And that's crazy to me. But it added up. And this is me who asks questions, who questions everything. And here we are.
That's pretty interesting that you say that you kind of like distance from your past self, because I feel like I've come to like a round circle of every part of myself of who I was, because I feel like in my life I feel like I've been so many different versions of myself, and it's kind of like at this moment I'm like a nice big gelled version, and I can be at a place where I can look back and like I say, I can understand my family so well. I can understand my mother. I know how they think. I know how they feel. I know what's going through their minds, and I can empathize with them. But at the same time, I can own who I am as a person, and I used to hold a lot of attachment to my to what my family thinks of me, what they value about me. And I honestly don't anymore because I've learned to really love myself and come to terms with
Yeah.
everything that I've become and my whole journey. And this is, I'm just going to try go into like my podcast.
Yeah, because I'd love to hear how you've kind of what it is
Yeah.
you're doing now, because this is it, right? It's being you and enjoying
Exactly.
being human.
Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, exactly. So it's called Refreshingly Human, and it's kind of like, well, what it's about is more about human connections and shared experiences. And I don't talk so much about myself being an ex-Muslim on there. And the reason I don't do that is because right now in my life, that's not what defines me as a person. That's not what defines who I am. And that's just a small part of an entire journey to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I really have a lot of respect for people who are doing this work publicly. And I think there's a lot of value in that, but it's just not what I'm building my brand on, because I feel like I can bring value on a different level completely. You know, like I've lived among so many different cultures in my life. I grew up South African, Indian, and then I was married into a Pakistani family for 7 years, and then I lived in Turkey for 2 years, and now I have very, very, very British in-laws. So I've lived. I haven't just like traveled, but I've lived in and among so many cultures that I've come to realize that we're always trying to see what's so different in all of us that we tend to forget that we all are human, we all bleed red. And at the end of the day, we all want and feel similar things. And that's what my show is about. And that's what I'm trying to project onto my show, is that like, I think that a lot of people who haven't experienced the ex-Muslim or leaving any religion, if they come to my podcast, they can relate to what I'm saying without even knowing what color my skin is or where I'm from.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's such an easy thing to do. This is, I talk about this often, but like, this is why I have long podcasts, because I can guarantee I could pick your worst enemy. And if I just sat them down for 2-3 hours and just chatted with them about their upbringing, their life, who they are, at the end of 2-3 hours, you'd be like, I'm not that bad a person. I can understand how they became that or why they believe that. Or like, it's really hard when you actually listen and when you get to know someone to see them as an enemy, to see them as a bad person. You might see them as a broken person. That might be, your perspective might go from, wow, this is a terribly evil, awful person to, wow, this is a really broken person that has some shit to deal with. That might be as where you come to, but like, I think you're not going to go, this person is deeply evil. Generally speaking, you're going to go, oh.
But I think that's another thing that religious culture kind of leads us to believe, that there is good and there is evil and there's no in between. And I firmly believe that there's good and evil in all of us. And we choose to see what we want to see in people. And like for me personally, I have a lot of people in my life that I don't like or I don't get along with. But I'll never see them as a bad or an evil person. It's just a conflict of personalities, a conflict of interests. I can still see them as a human being with feelings, and they have their own story. They have their own issues. I think it's okay for us to say that we don't get along with someone, or, you know, maybe they're just not someone that's on our wavelength. That's fine. But I think that we are conditioned to believe that we have to label people as good, bad, evil. And that's just something is a perception, really. Yeah.
Well, I mean, labels as a whole, right? I mean, we love a label, because a label just immediately means I can categorize you. I can put you over there. I don't even have to get to know you or hear what you have to think, right? Oh, you're a Republican. Oh, you're a, like Labor. You're a Democrat. You're, you know, whatever it is. This is political party. Oh, you're a Christian. Oh, you're a Muslim. Oh, you're an atheist. And because I know what that means, right? Atheist means X, Y, and Z. I don't know really what that means about you, but just that label immediately goes, oh, I can put you over there and I can decide whether you're a good guy, a bad guy, you're with us, you're against us. It's just this default that it feels that so many people are trapped in this like black and white, us, them mentality. I love that that's what you're doing though, that you're breaking down that us, them, that there only is an us. If we stop, if we listen, if we look, we go, oh, you're like me. You and me are very, very similar, actually. And yeah, we're very different. That's there. And that's easy to see.
But that
so
doesn't
is
mean anything.
The similarity.
Yeah.
No.
that doesn't mean anything, like I'm a brown person married into a white family, and I find that more often than not I'm like kind of picked out for my different culture. And it's, nobody wants to be the person in the room who's like pointed at to be different, nobody wants to be that person, and people are subconsciously doing it because they've never been outside of their bubble. And
Right.
we forget that at the end of the day, we're all just human. We could bond around our love for music. We could bond around our hate for religion. That there are similarities that we could bond on instead of pointing out, like, for example, I'm brown. I could point out, oh, you guys really love your tea, don't you? Oh, you guys love your English roast, don't you? Oh, you cook a very good English roast. Do you want me to teach you how to cook a curry? I could bring it on if I wanted to, but I don't do that.
Yeah.
But that's what's done to me, because people are not stepping outside of their bubbles, and they don't realize that that's not the way you bond with a person. If you want to get to know about a different culture, today we live in such a wide community. We have YouTube, we have books. Open a fucking book.
Yeah.
Research. Don't go to people and pick them out of a room. Don't go to the only brown person in a room full of white people and start asking them or start making assumptions about, oh, you only cook curries, or, oh, you must be really good at cooking curries, or anything like that. Don't do that. Go read a fucking book. If you want to learn how to make a good curry, go to YouTube.
Yeah. No, that's it's just so built into us. We see difference. So I think in defense of humanity, it is hardwired into our genetic codes to be defensive of anything that is different. We've evolved to go, oh gosh, that's not my tribe. That could be dangerous.
Oh yeah.
Run, or attack. Sure. That's my two options.
At least we've evolved from that.
And exactly, or at least at least intellectually, we have evolved, and so societally, we have evolved to the point where we go, oh, someone is very different to me. I feel uncomfortable. And I know, okay, I shouldn't attack them or run away. I should try and have a conversation, or I should try and gracefully leave the room, or whatever it is that, we've got to certain points where we respond to that. But the painful truth is that physiologically, we take hundreds of thousands of years to evolve. And it's only been maybe a few thousand years since we were bludgeoning people to death just because they look different. And let's be honest, in some parts of the world, we're still doing that. And I'm not even talking about non-civilized parts of the world. Yeah. America, we're looking at you. And here in the UK. But yeah.
Well, anyway. I mean, I totally get that, and I totally agree with that. But I think that these conversations are needed now, because we are in a time where these conversations can be had. We have that platform, and like Phil, I've actually started speaking out when someone makes a comment that's ignorant, or when someone because I like, especially if that person's going to be in my life for many years to come, I don't want to be the brown token girl in your life. So I speak out, and I think that we have to educate people nowadays. We have to start busting bubbles. It's going to happen. We're living in a multicultural world, and we're going to be forced to interact with other cultures, and we got to learn how to do that. So yeah, we're definitely evolving, and the only way we're going to keep evolving is if we speak and we have these conversations. That's the only way it's going to happen. Yeah,
and we're an animal which is remarkably adaptive, and we are so capable of learning, of growing, of developing, right? And so even though physiologically we have so much stuff that seems to be hardwired, right? I mean, like your sex drive, you look at the animal kingdom, right? I mean, how much, I don't know, going on dates and consent and lots of these things go on in a lot of parts of the animal kingdom. Not much, but guess what? We grew, we evolved, we've added all sorts of components to love and to care and to honor and to respect. And so we're capable of growing and evolving way beyond just our physical responses. And I think it is so important that we're pushing people and expecting the best from people. And I am really excited as well that we are moving forward as well.
Absolutely.
Like it's so exciting to see the outrage. I mean, you look at even I was so excited in the UK to see race become just such a huge issue in the last, few months in response to something that happened in America. Yes. But it wasn't about something that happened in America. It's about something that happens everywhere to every person that is not the majority race in that country. every time. And often is even, in fact, is often victim to a minority race in that country, but the minority race happens to be white, so they're powerful and they're rich and they're whatever. And so I think like I got so encouraged at the Black Lives Matters in Manchester here where we are. I mean, there were so many people at that march. I was just like, holy crap. It got me really excited. And I think as well, what's exciting about it, and maybe there's a lot of virtue signaling and maybe there's a lot of other components at play. I'm sure everyone's there to get an Instagram snap, or I'm sure people could argue that. But I've never been so encouraged as well that if you look historically at marches about race, it's not going to be a very diverse color that you're going to see. You're going to see dark colored people. And actually what was really exciting that I've seen again and again and again in marches that are happening all over the world about race is that there is a myriad of colored faces and like white, brown, black, whatever. There's such a mix, and you go, that's encouraging to see white people waking up to their supremacy, to their fragility, to their whatever, and going, yeah, I'm racist. I'd like to become anti-racist. Show me the way. That is like, that just is so exciting to see.
Yeah.
And of course, there's plenty of people that are not going, show me the way, right? But it's exciting to see that momentum. And I think, it's again, the things that are drawing us together. I think no one wants to be the bad person. No one wants to be racist. No. Well, maybe some people do, but the vast majority. Right? If you look at people that are racist, if you go, do you want to be racist? Oh, no, I'm not a racist. And it's like, okay, so you don't want to be a racist. Okay. Can we take a step down and go, is it possible that you could do that accidentally? And we start exploring this, and, and I think there's so much scope there in the right conversations to grow. And so having conversations that are breaking down these barriers, these us, these thems, these creating common ground. We're all human. We're all in the same place. Talk to me. So are you in season 2 or season 3 of your podcast?
Season 3 right now. Yeah.
3. And so each season kind of focuses around a certain kind of topic, right? Is that right?
Yeah. So when I started with season 1, I was kind of experimenting and I wasn't really going to be very serious about my podcast. And then, I'm not sure what your experience with starting full was, but mine was a lot of freaking anxiety when I started the platform. And I kind of when I started it, I kind of realized how little bit I knew about the online world. And I was like, damn, I used to just post selfies on Instagram, and now I've got to learn a lot of shit. And it's hard. It's really hard to make it out there. So after 8 months of podcasting, I kind of stopped. And I started another project. I started writing a novel about my life. And I'm almost done with the first draft of that. And then, and then a few months ago, some random lady on the internet made me really mad. And she sparked the episode of Urgency Culture, which was the first episode of season 2 and the comeback of my podcast. So the platform's kind of changed. And I am working in themes now just because it's a weekly show now, and just to be able to explore that as much as possible, and to also have a lot of content going on. I work on a themed basis now. So we covered the topic of success, and so with finding that line of humanity with success, we looked at what success meant and what failure means to people, to a wide range of people. And we just discussed that what we are conditioned to believe about these terms, and, what they actually mean to us, and how we can actually go forward from that. And change the meaning of success and find our own meanings, and change our dialogue about failure as well, because failure is so negative in our lives, but it can be such a positive thing if we choose to look at it that way. And Absolutely. You know what, honestly, there's no successful person on this earth who has not failed. There's no one. Show me
Absolutely. One. Yeah. No, absolutely.
And so that was the season on success. And now we are on season 3, which is on emotions, which I think is a really prevalent in our time right now, because, we all, our emotions are heightened right now.
Right. Yeah.
So I've been exploring typical emotions that we could feel on a day-to-day basis. And in the first 2 episodes, I spoke to a CBT practitioner and an academic on psychology, and we explored like where our emotions come from, why we feel them, and like the evolutionary history of them and why they are important. And now in each episode after that, we're kind of exploring each emotion in the form of stories. So I give my story of that emotion and like a story from my life. So the most recent one is shame. And I actually talk about how the hijab made me feel very ashamed of myself, which is quite an interesting story there. And then I have other friends coming on with their own stories about all these emotions. And over the whole season, it's kind of to show you that one person can feel all of these emotions. And, you know, like we kind of like we were saying, we kind of like look at a person, we put them in a box and we're like, oh, she's so positive, he's so angry all the time. But it's not the case. We all have a varied amounts of emotions and we all feel these emotions. Yeah. And also I'm reflecting on what these emotions taught me and the roles that they played in my life. As well. And I think that it's something we don't really look deep enough into. And that's what's happening right now.
That's awesome. That's really exciting. And so how long do your seasons run for? Are they quite
they're quite short.
Run, or they're short, yeah?
And they're quite short. So it's
so do you have a season 4 already, like you're in your head? You're
yes.
Like, oh, we're gonna do
Yeah, planned already, recording the first episode this week, actually.
Oh, wow. Awesome. What's the theme gonna be for season 4?
Goal setting in line with coming up to New Year's. We're going to be talking about goal setting.
Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Wonderful. Oh, it's really exciting. I love what you're doing. And I listened to a couple of your podcasts. I listened to an Instagram of you today, I think, talking about shame. And man, it made me think, man, shame is just so huge. And I think you were talking about, you know, how, you used to feel shame about, if I showed my shoulders and, within those religious components and things like that. And it's just so common. Right? I mean, it just suddenly bonds us again and we go, oh yeah, we've all felt shame. We've all done that.
Exactly, right?
Sorry, I interrupted you there. Go for it.
No, it's not that I felt shame of my shoulders. It was that I was made to feel ashamed of it, you know?
Yes. So that's a good clarification as well, yeah. And that's a common thing throughout, like, I mean, I know a lot of people listening to this and we talk about this a lot within Christianity. There's a concept of purity culture and you've got to be pure, and to do that you couldn't possibly wear a strappy top or show your shoulder or, or whatever, have any cleavage or, your skirt has to be a certain length and cover certain parts. And we talk to some people we talk to they're out of religion for 20 years and they are in a shop and they see an outfit and go, oh, I love that. And then they go, but I couldn't wear that. And it's 20 years later, they're in their 50s or something and they're completely autonomous human being and they're still allowing this mentality of the shame that was put on them, as a kid, still holding on to them. And so I think it's just so important that we actually engage with these emotions and go, whoa, I'm feeling shame. Where is that coming from? What's going on here? So fascinating.
What is it teaching me? I think that's a very important question. What is this teaching me and what is this telling me? Because I think that shame taught me a lot about what my values are and what is important to me. Because I was fighting the shame, I was fighting against it. And I think that shame is something that is a friend of all religions. It's an emotion that is a friend of religions because it's something that is a manipulative way of controlling people, and that is creating this essence of shame that we need to feel ashamed of, maybe our bodies or covering up, or I know, like in the Muslim culture, it's like your body. For a woman, your body is supposed to be like some sort of gem that no one's supposed to see. And obviously that gives the men no sense of self-control, because the moment the man sees a shoulder, he's like, oh, sex me up. Like, okay, nice, good job, shoulder, well done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, it pays, and then what happens is men are taught, oh, you're just these like uncontrollable, like basically a penis with legs and arms running around, and you couldn't possibly. And then we go, oh, why on earth are so many prominent religious people then caught in sex scandals and abusing people? And oh, well, their skirt was too short. I'm like, really? So it's okay for you to sexually abuse someone, rape someone or whatever, because it's the woman's responsibility how you handle your own. You know, it's these components at play that...
It creates such an unhealthy dialogue about sex and such an unhealthy relationship with sex, because you know what, Phil? Sex is fucking awesome. And it should be spoken about in a more open dialogue. And, you know, I firmly believe that the repressed culture of talking about sex is a lot of the reason that we have so many problems with sex nowadays as well. You know, I've seen it in my own culture. I've seen it with men who are so repressed, but they have like pictures of naked women on their phone, and they have problems with chronic masturbation because they can't have sex with women. You know, it's what's happening when we don't have a healthy dialogue about sex. And I'm actually going to be doing a whole season about sex because I'm so passionate about changing that dialogue. We need to change that dialogue. And I think that we all think that we were taught about sex this way, but we don't realize that we all were taught about sex almost the exact same way. Across all cultures, we are all being told or being not told the same things. And in some culture, like in some families, they don't even talk about it at all. They don't even have the talk.
No, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, like, I've joked about this on the podcast many times. My parents' talk with me was my dad basically saying one sentence to me as I was like going out the door once. And he was like, Phil, he's like, you know what sex is? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, use a condom. and he was a pastor. He didn't even believe in sex before marriage, like, you know, and he said, do you want to talk about this more? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. And I'm like, and that was it. And the rest I learned from repeatedly watching porn nonstop, because it was evil. And that was my teenage life, right?
I love that you can say that out loud, though, because people associate so much of shame with watching porn, but we've all watched it at some point in our lives.
Sure. And if you are a Christian guy, a lot of girls as well, but certainly a Christian guy, it's hammered into you every week at a youth group or at church. It's like, oh, you can't watch porn, you can't lust, you can't do this, you can't do that. You're 14. Your whole body is going, hi, I have an erection. I know it's been 4 minutes, but I've got another one. What do you want to do? I mean, the internet's there. It's just been created. You are in the golden age of being a teenager. We have to accept, okay, that's the reality. And guess what happens when you repress it, when you demonize your sexuality? I'm not saying you glorify porn, because there's plenty of, there's a lot of conversations about the ethics of different things. Yeah. So I'm not talking about ethical porn, but certainly the vast majority of porn, there's a lot of problems there. So I'm not saying porn is good, but what I'm saying is teenagers have a sex drive. We should probably talk about that. We should probably acknowledge it. We should probably not tell them your sex drive is evil and try and bury it, because now they're just going to keep having a sex drive but feel shit about it. And guess what that does? When you do get married, when you do start having sex, now you just feel shit about having sex, because you can't just turn it back on, you know? And so even though you're doing it the right way, you still have all this guilt associated. And it's such a messy, messy topic.
It is. It's really a messy topic. And it's just so much to get into in that topic. And I think you're going to be, if you up for it, I would love to have you on my sex
oh, sure. I'm always happy to talk. I would say a vast majority of the conversations we have on my podcast, sex ends up coming up, because people always have some crazy sexual hang up or teachings or whatever restrictions. And
for sure. It's such a big topic in religion. It's so big in religion. It's like, I feel like so much of our religion is based on sex and we don't even know it. It's just there, because like the hijab is based on sex. There's so much of sex in heaven. You know, marriage is based on sex. Just so many parts of religion that's based on sex. And we don't actually realize that, because that's not how it's taught to us.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's at the end of the day, it's one of the very external, real, tangible things. So when we spiritualize everything, that gets spiritualized. What are we going to do? We're going to do it good, bad, whatever. Like, it always ends up, it seems, within religion falling on a very negative side of the equation. And it gets wrapped up. And I'm sure there are different religions that glorify and very much are positive towards sex. I'm rewatching with my wife. There's a documentary on Netflix called Wild Wild County. Have you seen it?
No.
It's so good. It's about a cult that was in India, and they moved to Oregon in America and set up shop, and thousands of people ended up there, and it was crazy. But they were a very pro-sex kind of religious movement.
I'm so watching it.
And it is honestly one of the greatest documentaries ever. It's incredible. I love a good documentary about anything cultish.
Oh, me too.
So that, we just finished watching The Vow, which was in America. I think it's coming out in the UK this month, so keep an eye out for that as well. And that is really good. That's about the NXIVM cult in America that blew up, I think, last year. Or 2 years ago, and that's really good as well. But yeah, so it is there. Some religions, go the other way, and there's orgies in every other room, and like it's crazy. But it does feel that most religions seem to need to demonize, control. It's a great way to control. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's a great method of control to restrict sex. Definitely. To force marriage for sure. Yeah, to force marriage.
9 out of 10 Christians get married
Same.
at the age of way too young because we need to have sex. That's basically it. I'm horny. I'm not allowed to have sex. Okay, what do I need to do to have sex? Get married? Okay, done. Where do I sign? Yeah. That is how most Christian marriages originate.
Same. It's the same in Islam. Like it's the exact same thing.
Crazy. Really
it's crazy.
Sorry, you were about to say something and I interrupted.
Yeah, no, I was going to say my experience with the sex talk was quite funny because like you said, it wasn't even a talk. So basically in Islam, when a woman gets her period, they kind of like, now you're a woman, which technically is not fucking true. Please do not have sex with a woman who just got her fucking period because she cannot carry a baby physically. Like, my God. Anyways, so their whole thing is that once you bleed, you can have sex and have a baby. So as soon as I got my period, my mom was like, so I'm going to tell you the same thing that my dad told me when I went to high school. And if I catch you talking to any boys, we're taking you out of school. That was my sex talk.
Wow. Well, I mean, if you can take it enough steps back, if you can't talk to anyone, but I feel like you could do a lot of things without talking. I was always, where is the fine print? I would have definitely got that one. Yeah. I always joked with Christians. I always joked with Christians. So after I was in a married, earlier on, and I got divorced, and that I was still Christian at this point, and Christians really strongly believe no sex before marriage. And I always joked, I was like, well, this is not premarital sex. I'm after marriage. Right? I've been married and got divorced. Surely I can have sex with anyone at this point. I found the loophole. Did
that work for you? Because I remember my experience with it. Yeah, my experience with it. It was quite. I had to talk it through with my partner because. I've only ever been with 2 guys in my whole life. I've been married and then I've been with my husband. Wow. So, it was a big deal for me with my husband because we were dating for about 4 years before we got married. And obviously we had sex. But it was a big deal for me because I had all this religious shame brought into it. And I had to kind of talk it through with him and kind of think about it and really see if this is what I felt was good for me. And yeah, I mean, once you rip the Band-Aid though, you rip the Band-Aid. Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's a huge deal. And I talk to a lot of people that have left their faith and they still have these things. I mean, that especially is so ingrained because it's so intertwined with something that is so emotional, transformational. It's very existential, right? Your sexuality, who you are, your sexuality emerges around this time where you are figuring out who you are, and all these things are coming about. And to betray that on some level, to break that on some level, there's a lot going on there. It's a huge
very deal. Psychological, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's 2 consenting adults, you know, but that's not what we thought. That's really not what we thought. There's just so much of shame with it, so much of unnecessary shame. Because I know I have a friend, one of my best friends. She's also from a Muslim background, but she's not practicing anymore. And she's not really a Muslim. And I remember that when we were living together in Turkey, she used to feel really guilty about sleeping with guys. And I'd be like, dude, if you need it, get it. Stop feeling guilty about it. You know? It's like, you do you. And I had to keep talking her through it because we had another friend who would like kind of slut shame her. And I was like, well, don't listen to her. If you're happy to do this, if this is okay with you, do it. It's fine. Like, it's really should be the individual's decision. I wouldn't do it. It wouldn't be something I would do. But if she was happy and she was fine with it, then why not? Why should anyone shame her?
Yeah. When we look at how these practices and how these concepts come about, I mean, the idea of no sex before marriage, you're talking, these are like prehistoric concepts. It's concepts of property right. It's concepts of, women are property. And I need to ensure that you, after you purchase this property, you're getting a untouched product that you can guarantee that your child, with this woman, well, probably with this child, will be your child, and therefore we need to ensure her virginity, blah, 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 which good luck doing anyway. I mean, how are you even checking out? I mean, is this kid ridden a horse in its life? Or, there's so much going on here. But like, there's all this stuff. And actually, really, when you start taking a step beyond that, you go, oh, wait, so are women still property? No. Do we still sell them? No. Do we, are we into arranged marriages? I would say a vast quantity of the world still yes on all these topics.
Yeah.
But when you start stepping into the Western world and you're growing up and you're an adult and you're going, wait, hold on, I'm no one's property. No one's trying to vet to make sure that and even then, if they need their child to be with me and it has to be their child, well, guess what? We've got contraception. Even that is like, okay, we've got technology here to help facilitate these components. Because yeah, sure, I would like to have a child with my wife and it to be my child. Yeah, sure, absolutely. But there's a lot of other things going on here. I don't have to somehow manipulate and control that situation to make that happen. And so it's just amazing how we are still operating prehistoric terms and conditions to get about prehistoric outcomes, and holding people to that. And it just goes to show just how much still on many levels, women, even in Western culture that is enlightened and free and women have great rights, women are still on some level property. It's still how they're perceived subconsciously, maybe by most. But the social structure around it is very much women are still second-class citizens and still on some level a bit property. It's scary.
I mean, that's a big word you used there, property. And it's actually something I wrote in my novel when I was writing about my life. And it was like I was my mom and my dad's property as a kid, and then just my mom's as my dad died. Then I was my mom's property. Then I was my ex-husband's property. And then I was divorced. I was a 25-year-old divorced woman who became my mom's property again. I wasn't even a fucking adult. I wasn't even allowed to be a grown-up ass woman after my divorce. I was my mom's property again. And, when the time I actually lost and gave up my religion was in Islam. When you get divorced, you have to stay in an iddat period. It's a confinement period for 3 period cycles. 3 period cycles. That's how modernized this technique, this whole thing is. We don't have calendars anymore.
No calendars at this point.
No calendars. And in that period, I went through so many stages. And I think like my questions started coming up again because the whole concept of iddat itself is so screwed up. Because first of all, the reasons they came about was to mourn your marriage. And first of all, I was not mourning my fucking marriage. I was celebrating the fact that my marriage was over because I was like free. I was fucking free. But then I was put back into the cage for that iddat period. And then the other reason was to make sure that the woman's not pregnant. And I was like, well, we have pregnancy tests now. And if I had to sleep with anyone else and get pregnant, they could do a fucking paternity test. Like there's these reasons do not exist. Like they did not have value anymore. And then the other thing was that a woman is very emotional and she needs time to get over it. And I was like, but that's not like, you can't say all women are like that. You can't say exactly what all women need. And it shouldn't be mandatory. If a woman wants to take that time, she should. If she doesn't want to take that time, that's up to her. Yeah. If she wants
Is anyone putting any men in boxes because they have emotions?
Exactly. No one's doing that.
No one.
Apparently apparently men don't have emotions in that, men don't have emotions apparently. Like my ex was already on Facebook friending every other girl he could find. And I was fucking sitting in confinement. So, there's that. So yeah, I mean, it was crazy, and that just opened a box of questions for me, because that confinement didn't make sense to me, and a lot of people I was speaking to were telling me how their confinement period really helped them, and really like they made a good use of their time, and I was like, that's great. I'm happy for you, but it should be a choice.
Yeah.
Why is it mandatory?
Absolutely.
That was my issue. Why is it mandatory? Why is it not my choice? And that was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, my world is privileged. I'm white, I'm male, I'm like in the UK. It's a pretty decent enough place to be in sometimes, occasionally. Don't look too closely. And I can't even imagine, going through those kind of concepts, being property, being seen as property, being treated as property. Like, it's just a whole world away from my reality. And so I think it's so exciting to hear your journey, to see what you're doing now and how you're helping people. It's really exciting. It's an amazing thing, and you should be really proud of how far you have come and all that you're doing. I mean, it's a really amazing accomplishment to come from, very controlled, manipulated backgrounds into helping people live their best lives and free. Like that's astonishing. It really is. And so you should hold your head up high over that one. For sure.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of like what got me re-energized to keep doing this, because a lot of people, whenever they hear my story, they'd be like, oh my God, that's like so amazing. Your life is so amazing. And for me, it's just my life, it is, It's literally just my life. But the reactions and the word that people were getting out of it kind of motivated me to speak about it publicly, and to like you said, to help other people. Like if I didn't speak about it, it would literally just be, that was just my life to me. It wouldn't hold any value to anyone else.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful. I want to be really respectful of your time, because we've gabbed on a fair amount. But how can people connect with you and what you're doing and stuff? Like, where are you at online? So you've got your podcast is Refreshingly Human. Is that right?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And
so they can find that.
Yeah, you can find that on all podcast platforms. And then I'm on Facebook as Refreshingly Human, Instagram as Hannah Pillow RH, and my website hannahpillow.com will be active before the end of the year. I'm just waiting on my new logo, and things will that will be active soon. You're
on it. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell your story. And I think it's been very insightful for me, because I have actually had, I think, one other person that's come from the Muslim community, but it's been really refreshing and interesting and intriguing. I love exploring kind of other areas, and it like you say again, we're all very similar. Like this process is so similar for people that are from such different backgrounds. But again, when you look closely, you go, oh, we had that kind of control and manipulation as well. Oh, we had that kind of whatever it is, I also think I love watching these documentaries about cults and reading books of people coming out of cults, and I'm always like, oh, that's what you call that. We call it something else. Like, but I'm like, oh, we have that too. We have this cultish practice. And it's just, it's so fascinating to hear. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. And I'd encourage people to check your stuff out for sure. I'll make sure all the links and stuff are in show notes and things like that. I think you wanted to chat offline anyway. So we'll do that as well. But thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.